Greetings and salutations, travelers. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and as always, welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussions. This time, we are discussing Reptilian representatives. And if you watched our last one, you know what that was alluding to. The conspiracy theory on that and all that type of stuff. We're not going to totally rehash that, but we are going to put on an idea of what type of characters specifically to play in that type of an adventure that we were talking about with the snake people and those things like that. So, before we get into that, let's go ahead and do our introductions and announcements for people that might be coming here that are new. I am Adam L. Spain with the Inn of Planar Crossroads. You can... Oh, I got the wrong thing up. There we go. Inn of Planar Crossroads. You can check us out there and discuss with us on the different social medias, and we've got YouTube, Rumble, BitChute. We do technically have a Twitch, but we're not active on it right now. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Subscribestar, PayPal, Locals, and Patreon also. It's not on here, but it's there. And you can check out any of those. Any of them. And see how you like them. We are going to be... hopefully by this time I've got some of the art done. Maybe we'll be showing it off by now for a friend's Kickstarter that has finished up. I think it should be finished up by then when these release. So you'll know based upon Facebook, based upon the social medias. So you can check that out if you'd like. That's what I've got. What about you, Skrat?
Oh, I'm Skrat from A Squirrel Plays over on YouTube, and I like to make videos talking about storytelling things, such as making interesting characters, interesting villains, and world building exercises. But I also like to dive off into tabletops, TTRPGs. I do get into that more than I originally planned, but I am not complaining. The community has been excellent. They've been very good to me. They just kicked me right in head first. They said, nope, you're with us now. And so I get to kind of overlap with the storytelling side of that, since there's lots of storytelling in TTRPGs, obviously. But I do also like to do TTRPG reviews, as I'm experiencing a lot of these. Well, some of these games are new, like Crown and Skull and Adventurous. Those are new systems. Right? Crown and Skull is a new thing, right?
Relatively speaking.
Yeah, I'll say they're all new to me, because I am fairly new to the TTRPG world. I still consider myself fairly new, but I do have two-year campaigns under my belt that I ran for some people. So we went start to finish. I didn't have them fizzle out, so I'm just going to call it there. No more campaigns. I'm a pro. I have a flawless record.
You're quitting while you're ahead, huh?
Yeah, I'm just going to do one-shots and some shots now, little mini.
Well, I mean, technically some shots count, so...
Yeah. I just, in all honesty on that note, I did get kind of burned out with campaigns. It's like, yeah, I think I would rather several short adventures. Same characters, reoccurring characters, but none of this multi-year endeavors. I feel like everybody just gets burned out, but that's not what this conversation is about. We're talking about snake people.
Yes, we are.
Not player burnout.
No. So, since that is the case, and we are trying to be rather speedy with ours, we don't want Dan to think that we're the problem with us going long. So we did good last time. This time we're hopefully going to do good. We're going to bump on over to Levi's Spotlight. Levi's Spotlight is Mage's Musings this month. It's our last Spotlight for him this month. He's at 1.28k right now. Uses a puppet and a demi-lich skull and such to do recaps and reviews, or as he calls a review cap, of the different things they go through, as well as doing some other things, different adventures they go through. So check that out if you would like to. It's on YouTube. Again, that's Mage's Musings. So that's our quick shout out. Are you ready now, Skrat, to dive on in?
I am. Let's do it.
All right. Well, you slippery folks, pull up a chair around the hearth and join us by the fire with your preferred beverage as we discuss reptilian representatives. Skol. They changed up your little toast thing.
They
I mean, that's...
did.
Your squirrel's going to be outright just sauced.
Be gone.
His poor squirrel liver. All right. Well, we are in Union of the Snake. So last time we talked about different adventure-specific ideas. Like, I really liked Skrat's idea of maybe using the Area 51, pairing that with the idea of secret reptilian people trying to take over the government stuff. So that worked well in my mind. Pairing about 3 different conspiracy theories of, since the actual song talks about Union of the Snake, which are reptilian people. The conspiracy works with that, as well as the conspiracy with radio and frequency waves being used to mind control and affect our thinking processes, with the radio portion there. So mixing those 3 kind of things together with the Roswell, the snake people, and the radio frequencies, I think that works pretty good for setting up a adventure. So now we're going to be talking about specific considerations for playing as characters in that adventure, and perhaps some character types that we would suggest. So, do you want to go first, Skrat, or would you like me to go first?
I have a bunch of snake facts for this one you could use for your character, so maybe you should go first. Okay.
So, we've talked in our last few chats about perhaps playing around with whether you're a mutant. In this case, you would be a snake, a reptilian type of mutant, or not. This would depend on whether you want the snake people to be protag or antag. And I think it's kind of more fun if they're antag. But I could see where you did kind of like an E.T. or what was it, Mars Attacks, that one show that you... What was that show? Space Invaders. You do like a fun... I guess you could do... You mentioned it in our... What was it? What chat was that?
I don't know, but that movie's so great. Golly, what did I bring? What did it have been? Did you have a weird one? Like just weird whatever? Or
there was
crazy...
April Absurdities. But that was all food. I don't know. We brought it up last time. Not last time, but at some point this year, I think. Sci-fi is in July, so it couldn't be sci-fi.
I remember bringing it up, though.
So that one's a fun one if you want to play this. That's where you could play the snakes, I think. The snaky people. Is if you were doing something along the lines of Space Invaders or something like that. That would even go with the space crash. So, you could do that. That would be fun. If you're doing something a bit more serious, I would think playing the heroes would be more fun for the players. But some players do like playing bad guys. So there's options there. As far as specific type of characters, I'm going to go with I'm going to presume we're going with the one that's closest to the music video of the song. So let's say we're going with a scenario where you have your players are going to be playing local townsfolk, perhaps, who live not too terribly far from the Area 51 crash site. And maybe it's far enough away where they don't get the hustle and bustle. It's a smaller town kind of that's satellited off. And it kind of grew up from just people traveling to Area 51 and stopping out there. So they needed an extra place, grew up there. You can pick any kind of town you want to. I believe it's is it New Mexico? Roswell, New Mexico? or Roswell, Arizona. Now I gotta look that up. But you have them out there, and you would go and New Mexico. I thought it was New Mexico. You would have them out there. They're in that town. They're local, and people just start disappearing, perhaps, or maybe they start wandering off. It kind of depends on how creepy you want to get with it, because you could do it with that. You can do, maybe there's already been disappearances on the res close by. Maybe the res is also having that type of a problem, so you might have a mixing of different cultures there if you want to. And you would play characters trying to figure this out, trying to investigate what's happening. Maybe because no one wants to investigate, every time someone goes to investigate every time an official is called or something like that, it just gets buried. That could be an option, especially if you're going to play up the angle of the conspiracy by the lizard folk, reptilian peoples that are having that effect. And if you want to do the mutant part of it for your PCs, then you could do something like with what we talked about in our what was it? It wasn't Everyday Heroes, but it was like that. January Jaunt. We talked about how you could split off your extraordinary abilities, at least in Open Legend, using that as an example. You have your regular stats, and then you have your extraordinary abilities. Perhaps your player characters are starting to develop those abilities, and you could do it where, as they went along, they discovered that these individuals were being exposed to the same radiation or the same radio waves or frequencies that were causing other people to go out into the desert, maybe, and disappear. So it's a catch-22 for the lizard folk. That gives you an option there as a GM. And it also gives the players extra stuff to now face these problems. So you could have one that was really strong. You could have one that was really, perhaps had started to develop telepathic abilities. And you could start building these out. So that's kind of my idea with that. I would say that you would probably want 4 player characters, but 3 is an okay number as well. 4, at least 3. I could see someone playing it as a 2 character, though. It'd be harder to do as a solo. So, those are some of my suggestions on player character considerations. Did you want to jump in here with some of your snake facts?
Dang it, I had a thought, though. Yeah, you could... We've been saying the snakes are the bad guys, but, I don't know. I feel like it'd be interesting. Oh, I'm breaking my microphone here. I don't know if you heard that, but,
No, you're good.
It would be interesting to try and make the snakes the good guys. You could go back to the, if people were dumping chemicals or whatever and things they weren't supposed to, and that's what messed up the snakes, turned them into snake people maybe, or the snake people were already there and then that happened. Hey, maybe the snake venoms actually can mutate things in people. But I think it would be very debatable on whether they were actually good guys or not. But that might be an interesting twist you could do at the end and have the players thinking, geez, were we bad or good in that campaign? But whether you're playing as the snakes or against the snakes, I did go find a bunch of random snake facts, and I thought they would be interesting for when you're building this game. So... one that stood out, actually I got a few that stood out, but the first one here was a decapitated snake can still bite up to hours after death. I didn't know that. And then more interestingly, these bites usually contain huge amounts of venom. So I know there's I've even used them. Enemies that explode upon death, So if you're a melee kind of guy and you go up and stab the thing and it blows up in acid or fire or something, it might be, usually you have to do a save to not get hurt by that. But might be interesting if you lop the head off thinking you were doing good and then it keeps coming for you. It gives you an extra dose of poison. Or, if the venom has got some kind of mutagen in it, you run the risk of being mutated. And on that note, Electrum Archive was a game I played not too long ago, and that deals with mutations and stuff. I meant to bring that up in, I think, the second chat. Completely forgot. But, when we were talking about mutation, that one, some mutations are good, some are very bad. Like, one player technically didn't die, but he mutated and turned into this pile of flesh, so he couldn't do anything. But he was essentially dead, right? But technically still alive. Let's see. Then there were some, I don't know if I would consider these facts, but they were talking about, snakes had legs for 70 million years before losing them. Like, I don't know how you get that information, but that was listed, and I was like, well, that's kind of interesting, because you could take that and then maybe have different levels of snake people that you're dealing with. You could have like some that did evolve over time or whatever, mutated due to whatever circumstances. And I think I mentioned that in another chat where you have the snake people with arms and legs, and then maybe or just giant snakes that they ride down there that are still more on the animal side, that they use as beasts of burden or whatever. So that would be interesting to see. And I started to bring this up earlier, when I think as it's tail end of the last chat. You're talking about snakes in the desert, but you could have them somewhere else. So when snakes get below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, apparently their bodies don't work properly. I don't know exactly what don't work properly means. I guess they slow down and digest incredibly slow or something. They do say that they digest food faster when they're warmer. So would be interesting if your climate played a role in this. Like if they had a very toasty underground, maybe the players going down have to deal with that overheating. Might be something. Or you could use the cold against the snakes. Maybe your cold attacks would have a tremendous advantage over them and slow them down. Or story wise, maybe things are getting hotter and it's making them more hungry, and that's what makes them venture out. I don't know why I wrote this one down, but it is kind of neat. Snake fangs wear out in 6 to 10 weeks, and then they just grow new ones. So you could find snake fangs just laying around. Let's see. And the idea I was kind of getting here, again, whether you're playing as a snake or making snake characters to go against and not just fight as mindless drones. And I don't just say that because I just made a video on not making death useless. But to give them a little more life, you could base these off real snakes. Like the king cobra would be the easy one, right? People recognize that when they see it. So you could, if you had a leader amongst these snake people, maybe make him the king cobra, because you recognize that big flared out neck when you see it. Or maybe that's just a really dangerous bodyguard to the king, because cobra's dangerous. Apparently they have enough venom, they can eject enough venom to kill an elephant. Now that sounds like a lot of venom to me. Wow, they seem pretty dangerous. But it would be interesting. And kind of similar to the food one, where I was saying, like, hey, you could take the nutrition information and base the stats for your character off of that. Remember talking about that? Yeah. So you could take snake information, and you could try and translate that into stats for your... That's more on the mechanical game level instead of story stuff. But like all right, how big are these snakes, or how fast is this one? Who can, has higher levels of venom. It would be interesting, now that I think about this. This is coming out of left field, to make venom more interesting. Like, it could do different things other than just damage over time or whatever.
Well,
could have varying degrees of potency and really mess you up in the long run.
There was the Vishkanya race in Pathfinder that could have two different types of venom. One was a poison and one put you to sleep.
Ooh.
So there's that option there, especially if they're more advanced. They would, or depending on if they're alien. Depending on if they're alien or if they're actually like a subterranean race or something like that. You could do that where they're developed different venoms, either within the same body, like they could choose how potent to make their venom when they made the bite, or you can make it where different breeds of them would do different ones. Either way works. And
yeah, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, like, really interesting to, how some games have, like Break, it has a wound system. When you lose so much health, you acquire a wound, and you have to roll for this type of wound, and that affects you until you can properly rest and heal. And it may be permanent, because some of them are losing limbs, and there's different degrees of wounds, and different systems do it differently. But man, it would be interesting. I feel like if you have this adventure, you're going to go deal with these snake people. The venom played a huge role in it. Like, it was, you have your normal hit points, but then venom is just got more layers, more interesting. It's like, oh, I got this snake bite. Okay, it just did a little extra damage. Oh, nope, this arm is now numb. My armor is deteriorating because it got some of that acid venom stuff on it. Things like that. It would be just worrying about your HP would be the basic thing, and that wouldn't be your main It's like, nope, what does this venom do? That's what I'm worried about. Health is just kind of secondary.
Yeah. Alright. Well, I think we are about 23 minutes, because I think we talked first about generations. That's what it was. So we're on time still. One thing to tie into that, I like the idea you mentioned, maybe that the venom mutates, and that might be something interesting to do. I think I'm going to go ahead and do my final thought, but it's a longer thought. So it'll take you into the time that you can do your final thought. So my final thought is to tie into, for character consideration, these characters, and at least with this character for Union of the Snake, you would want them to be considering that the snake in this one, they're crawling up, they are coming to break through that borderline, that Union of the Snake. And I'm going to go with it's a malicious type of thing. There is a story by Zelia Bishop and Lovecraft together that is called The Curse of Yig. I think it's both of them. I think he helped her with it some. But she did a few of the Yig stories. Now, Yig is the serpentine deity within that mythos, that Shub-Niggurath mythos. And to bring that into the modern setting, one of the ones that she wrote is called The Mound, and it takes place out in Oklahoma. So you may move it a little bit, but The Curse of Yig is about people that start to take on snake-like traits because of the Curse of Yig. they start to become more serpentine and snake-like. And so that can feed into your mutation. It would be magical, but I could see how perhaps you have this kind of shadowy governmental portion there that's kind of the cover-up for Area 51. Instead of there actually being a crash, it was something else. It was maybe a meteorite or something like that the Yigites were waiting on. And now the cult, the Union of the Snake, is actually not a governmental thing necessarily, but it's the people, maybe in that town. Maybe this could be where you kind of have your players choosing sides. Do they want to choose the side of the Union of the Snake with which possibly some of the people that they're attached to are part of? Or do they want to go against the Union of the Snake and fight against the Curse of Yig? And if it's a governmental thing, then the government's trying to use that to enhance soldiers perhaps, or to further their agendas, improve themselves via the Curse of Yig through metered control of how much of the curse it accentuates. Possibly. Might be interesting to really play around with that. And for the characters in this, I think you're going to really want to tie in with those investigative characters. You're going to want at least one investigative character. And make sure that there's a tie there for them to have a personal connection. So the Curse of Yig is a involuntary thing in the story. This might be a more directed malicious thing, depending on how you want to do that. The Union of the Snake, passably. Maybe you could take a lot more inspiration from the story of the Curse of Yig. Still keep it modern, but say the reservation out there sells a piece of it off because they don't want to mess with that part of the land. They say that it's cursed. Well, this group of developers buys it and starts putting houses out there, and now you've got something happening. Something's happening after people start to live there, to exist there for, day after day after day. Not just working there, but actually living there, sleeping there. That could be interesting. Now you're sent in to investigate, or maybe you live there and you're needing to investigate as part of your job now too, working for the government. That is also an option. I think this opens it up to a lot of interesting stuff when we start to pair it up with that story that I had almost forgotten about. I'm glad I remembered. So that was my final thought there, to try and tie into that. So tag, Skrat.
So, I just now thought of this. I can't believe we made it this far talking about snake people, and I guess this can be the comment for the video. Snakes on a plane.
Snakes on a plane.
We didn't make one joke about it.
Well,
and we were talking about snakes with a UFO. The snake could have been on the UFO that crashed.
An alien snake on a UFO.
Yeah. Whoa.
Well,
anyway, I was talking to Glee about this earlier. And she brought up Ouroboros. How do you say that?
Ouroboros. You had it right the first time.
The infinity snake or whatever. That thing's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. You could use that for a symbol of the Union of the Snake.
Yep. I'll say I did, and I didn't write any of that down. I found some page that was talking about what snakes symbolize in various cultures and religions, and that was pretty interesting. A lot of rebirth, renew kind of thing, which I was surprised. It's like not what I think of when I see a snake. I think I'm dying when I see it.
Well, you don't usually watch them shed their skin.
Yeah, that's true. But man, really, I don't have a whole lot of final thoughts on this one. Just all that Venom stuff that came to me while I was doing it. I I thought was interesting, and not just because it was my idea, but the idea of it affecting your character as you're playing so much, and that being a big threat, and it would play well if we can go that route. I feel like it would play well into the whole mutations things that we've been talking about in these episodes. You just have this really weird venom that does all these strange things. It would be kind of interesting. It's like, hey, sometimes when you get bit, it could be a good thing. You might benefit from that. But,
yeah.
That could be, a roll of the dice, as it were, But very low chance to have one that's just straight beneficial. But I am kind of tempted to go see what I could come up with for some kind of venom system that you could just slap on generically to any regular TTRPG system you're using. Just, another fun layer or something. Kind of like when people make the sanity checks and systems for things they're playing.
Yeah.
Something like that would be interesting. Obviously, it would play more well or better with other systems than some, but rules lights would probably have more wiggle room.
Yeah. You have things like Pathfinder has a lot of venoms in it already. If you go to OG Pathfinder 1, they've got a lot of venoms to look at and get ideas from. Condensing it down would be into something that just adds on would be fun. And having that there, it might be one of those things where for the PCs that are playing in this particular adventure, where they may already be affected by that venom. Especially if they're in the town already, or if we kind of pair up the ideas, if they're already living on the place that's being affected, they may already be exposed to one form or another of the venom. And you can have it, if it's a one-shot, you can just have them roll on a table. Tell them, roll on a table, no repeats, see what you get. And then they can discover a bit of what their mutation is as they go through, and they got to come to terms with the fact that they're mutating. What do they want to do? They're being affected by the curse of Yig. What do they want to do? Do they want to go full cultist and embrace the curse and become snake-like? Or do they want to resist it and try and stop it from making them not human anymore? That could be a thing.
Yeah. What if you get the venom, and then you have the mutation, and it starts off good, and then all these variations you have can actually progress if you don't heal them, and then you get this one you think's good, and you let it progress, it gets better. You let it progress, it gets better, and then like the last stage is really terrible, and you can't cure it.
Yeah,
that would suck. That'd be a mean thing to do.
Well, what you would do is to balance it out, you would have it kind of peak on the good part. Kind of peak at stage 3. So 1, 2, 3 it peaks for the good. And then you get more and more penalties or more things happening that might not be desirable as they go down, as they go to 4 and 5. So there's that middle point where it's like you can get the sweet spot if you complete the story correctly or do it, however you guys want to work that.
That'd be neat. That's all I got, though. Random snake facts for the night. So we got a comment, snakes on the plane. So I think we're good.
Snakes on a plane.
Or squirrels on a plane. Which one?
Squirrely snakes on a plane.
Ah.
There you go. Squirrely snakes on a plane. That's worse. That's worse than regular snakes on a plane.
A squirrel snake.
It's just one long tail with the squirrel head.
Yeah, I was thinking of a snake that goes up in a tree or something, but they have the flying snakes that do that. So.
Yep. Flying snakes, winged serpents, stuff like that. Yeah.
That's just wrong, that flying snakes are a thing.
Well, you'd have to take it up with the maker. I don't do that. All right. Well, since we have come to this last one, hopefully you've gotten some ideas for your particular characters playing in an adventure based around the Union of the Snake and an emerging subterranean, probably, reptilian menace? Question mark? Probably a menace. They're snakes. But anyway, hope that you've enjoyed. Please check out the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and you can check us out on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, Twitch if you want to. We're not active there right now. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Subscribestar, PayPal, Locals, or Patreon. Like, share, subscribe the video. And also check out A Squirrel Plays. Like, share, subscribe his videos. It was his birthday month, so you can give him an extra $1 on buymeacoffee.com/asquirrelplays. Yeah. Check out Levi's Spotlight, which was Mage's Musings. And I think we're done. So, as always, have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
Bye.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
So, a way that I tell the 80s and 90s apart is about how much CGI is in it and how good/bad it is.
There's that.
Because the closer you get to modern times, the closer you get to the early aughts, the more likely you are to see some CGI stuff. But not a lot. You see, a lot of CGI didn't start until the early aughts into the teens. And it's weird having lived, when you really look back at it, it's kind of weird having lived through so many different decades. Because you have the 80s, you have the 90s, you have the early aughts, and the early aughts do feel different than the 10s. They feel kind of different. And now we're in the 20s. So it's like, I don't know what this one's going to feel like. But, I don't know.
I ain't liking it so far.
It's not my favorite. I do.
Had an awfully rough start.
Well, I mean, the teens weren't exactly the greatest either.
Mm-mm.
So, that's the thing. It's strange because the very early aughts, the millennia changed, and so did everything else. Because you can have the 90s bleed over into the 2000s until you hit 2001.
Yeah.
When you hit September, when you hit September of 2001, everything starts to shift.
Yeah, there was that. But then I was also going to say, I remember growing up, we always had a computer in the house because Dad was a computer guy, right? That's what he did for a living. So we were always up to date, for lack of better words. Oh, I have a cat guest. But I remember people in the neighborhood like not having them or really not knowing how to do anything with them, and that even. It seems like what you were saying, kind of when you got into the early 2000s, that really started to go away, and technology had kind of pushed itself into every household to stay at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then things just accelerate so fast at that point.
Yeah, the ubiquity of PCs, personal computers, and the internet. That changed everything that people did. And you're right, it didn't really hit until you had some in the 90s, because I remember us having a computer in the 90s. We didn't have internet. because we really didn't need... People who have lived with and without the internet would understand this. You just didn't need the internet.
Right, and I was just sitting there thinking too, like, it's weird. You know, I got some years under my belt, but I wouldn't consider myself, like, particularly old. But it is really weird to think, like, okay, I remember a time when computers were just kind of there, you know. Some people had them, some people didn't. Like you just said with the internet, you didn't particularly need it. Now you can't function without those things. Like, they are about mandatory to have.
Well, it's not that you necessarily can't, it's more that you just don't. Because there is a certain amount of mandatory nature to it because of just how people communicate now, like with email. So you can argue that it's that way. But you used to not have to have a bank account to get paid type of thing. Now that changed, you know, everybody has a bank account. Used to not have to have a computer. Now you need a computer to access the internet. Because like my mom and papa, they have had a computer for a long time, even back into the 90s, I think. But it had like Encyclopedia Britannica on it and stuff.
Yeah.
And an educational thing for dinosaurs. And that's what I did on it. You know, you didn't do internet stuff, you did that. And you looked up different things. So it's interesting to look back at that and realize, yeah, you've lived through that time period where you didn't need the internet, and now you have the internet and you know both. I tell people that I think that there's a different generation. There's Generation X and Generation Y. There's Generation X and then Generation Z. So we got Gen X and Gen Z. But there's a missing generation there because of the millennial shift. You have the millennials, and then I think that there's a different generation that's that's mixed in with the millennials. You have normal millennials that don't know what it is to be without, you know, tech stuff. But you have the Generation Y, which is just super micro generation, that's not actually divided from a time period type of standpoint, but more of an experience in that time period, where they didn't grow up with the internet in their early formative years. They know what it's like to not have internet. And then the millennials don't know what it's really like to not have internet. They don't remember a time before that. Even though they may have grown up during that time, they don't remember it and don't exist in it with that knowledge. So I like to say I'm Generation Y, but I'm not a millennial, because I don't.
One thing that gets me about some of the younger people I see, like they don't. It's extra weird to me. It's like, man, you grew up surrounded by this. Why is it you never think to go Google something? Like, they'll be like, man, I wonder how this thing works. And it's like, man, I remember, you know, before Google, there was a lot of questions I had, and, you know, when I learned something, I had to ask Mom to take me to the library and go get a book and try and figure it out, only find the book was no good, or, you know, it was too hard to understand.
Yeah.
You can just hop on YouTube and find a how-to. Like, it's amazing. And then people, they're just like, I don't understand how to do this. They're struggling with their homework. I'm like, you have access to the world's best math teachers. They're on YouTube. What are you doing, man?
Well, they're on YouTube. There's, like, with my kids, when I first started homeschooling my kids, this is how much the internet changes things. When I first started homeschooling my kids, 16 years ago, not 16 years ago, technically. Okay, so be fair. 10 years ago, just to throw it out. About 10 years ago, when I started to homeschool my kids, little less. Wow, it's less than 10 years, like 8 years. They was using paper mainly because it was more complete. I could do more exercises with them and have a bit more, involvement with that.
Mm-hmm.
But Khan Academy started to develop in the teens.
Yes.
And by the time my kids were around for school stuff, and I had pulled them out of regular school to do homeschool, Khan Academy was one of the things I started using with them. And you can basically teach your kids with Khan Academy. Now, I find that you do have to talk them through it. It is best experienced with your parent being there, doing it with you. So
that makes sense.
That's how it's worked for us. And if anybody wants to homeschool their kids now, they may as well just do it. I mean, Khan Academy's free. You don't have to pay for it.
I tried a couple things on there. I was like, wow, yeah, pretty cool.
I mean, their math is really good. Their math is really good. Their history's really slanted to a certain perspective, but their math is really good. Some of their science is really good. And their art history can be pretty good. So, their ancient history isn't too bad either.
I would have benefited greatly from Khan Academy if it had been around, because I was homeschooled too. And Mom's a math and English major. She was a tutor for a while, but she only knew how to teach one way. So, and it wasn't working for me. I would have really benefited from Khan Academy and having those videos to watch and, them like drawing things out and showing, it's like that. I would have benefited from that. But Mom was like, just read this book. I was like, it doesn't work for me, man. I need a little extra help.
Yeah. I need visuals, Ma. Visuals.
Yeah.
Doodle for me, Ma.
Doodle.
All right. Okay, we're 10 minutes in, and this is not discussing what we're supposed to be discussing.
It's not. Let's get back to snake people.
Snake people in the desert or in the jungles or something underground coming out to the radio.
Jungle desert.
Okay. Room tone.